Good evening, fellow gardeners. We've chose to come in the house here and answer a few questions. Let me tell you, it's hot outside. It's really hot. It's still early September, 4th September I think it is, but I'm going to tell you, it's hot and it's humid. We went out and made a couple of videos this morning and I got sopping wet with sweat. But anyway, we're in the house now where it's a little cooler and we're going to answer some of these questions. And I know some of these questions we answer are going to be, maybe it's repetitive, we have answered them 2 or 3 times, but you know, what we have is new subscribers coming online every week, and we appreciate those. But, you know, they haven't went back and looked at all the videos that some of you have, so it's going to be repetitive to you, but some of these others haven't heard it yet, so we're going to answer a few questions, and bear with us. Those of you that have been with me from the front, bear with us, and let's go over them for them, and maybe you might glean a little something out of it, maybe. And the question was asked, when should I start my tomato plants if I'm going to plant them in February? Well, okay, evidently this is someone that has a high tunnel. Because if you're going to put tomatoes out in February, you're going to have some protection, either a high tunnel or either you're going to make you some low tunnels over your tomatoes, or either you're in South Texas where it doesn't get real cold. Because here in southern Oklahoma in early February, we're liable to get down to, and up into March, we're liable to get down to 15 or 16 degrees, sometimes even 12 degrees. So we have to put ours in a high tunnel. So yes, we do start them early so we can get them out in February, and that way we can get them off and ripened and through with the season before middle of July when it gets terribly above 100 degrees, because tomatoes just not going to take that kind of weather. So we start our tomato seed. We'll plant them in our little plugs. We put them in little, what we call 6-pack plugs. There's 6 packs in a flat of 10 inches by 20 inches. There's 36 plants in that, or plugs, and we put a seed in each plug. We fill it full of good fine soil, and then we put a seed, just put it right on the top of it, just press down just a little with your finger, and then we'll put vermiculite on top of all those seeds to cover them, and that vermiculite will hold moisture. Now, you don't have to do this. You can just put more soil on top of them. You do have to water a little more often. But anyway, we start them in around Christmas time, and that way we'll have them ready to go in February. So that's the answer for that. If you're going to plant them in the ground in February, start them right before Christmas. Question, okay?
What is vermiculite and what is perlite?
All right, perlite is a volcanic material that's been heated and expanded, and it holds no moisture. Now, vermiculite is right the other. I can't tell you exactly what it's made out of, but it is heated and expanded, and it will hold 10 times its weight in moisture or more. So we use that vermiculite on top of the seeds to hold the moisture to keep them drying out. Now, you can just use soil on top of them, real thin soil, and water them in good. Lay a piece of plastic or a plastic dome over that flat and keep the moisture in, but you got to keep that moisture on that seed. You can't let it dry out real dry, because if you do, then the seed will die as it starts to germinate. If it doesn't have enough moisture, it's going to die instead of germinate, sprout and grow. Okay. Let me look through where I had some more questions about okay. Can we use grow lights to grow inside, tomatoes inside in the wicking tubs? Yes, there is people that grows them in their little room or something. They'll put foil on the sides of the wall to reflect the light, to make it lighter in there so that the whole plant gets light. And then they'll use grow lights and grow their tomatoes inside in your wicking tubs or in wicking buckets. You sure can. Now, growing tomatoes in tubs, do you have to worry about cutworms? Well, yes, that won't solve the cutworm problem. But no, we don't have any problem with cutworms, because if we're putting ours in February, it's still too cold for any of the millers to be out flying around, laying eggs to hatch into worms. So if you put your tomatoes out in February, you won't have any trouble with cutworms, more than likely. Now, later on in the season, as it warms up, you will have some problems with those big old hornworms that the moths lay. They're a big old worm about the size of your finger. They got a little horn sticking up on each end, and that's a hornworm. And you do have to watch for them. When they hatch out, they can start eating that plant up, and they eat a lot of foliage when they do. Okay, another question was asked, would you recommend a trellis for tomatoes rather than lay them over the side of the barrel? Well, folks, everybody has to make their own decision of which way they want to grow their tomatoes. It's just like, do you drive a Ford or a Dodge or a Chevrolet or a Toyota? You know, you got to make that decision what works best for you. So growing the tomatoes, do you want to set them up on a barrel and hang them over the sides and not have to tie them up? Or do you want to put them in a wicking tub and put a stake in it and tie them to that stake? Or put a string up and tie them to that string? Or you can set them long in rows and do a stake and weave and hold them up together. Or you can do a trellis, flat trellis, and tie them to that trellis. Or you can use a tomato cage in each one of those buckets. There's lots of different ways. You've just got to see what you've got accessible to use and do that way. There's many ways to do it, and there's not one way better than the other for everybody. Everybody has to pick out what works best for them. So, yes, use any kind you want, the trellises or use the cages. Cages are expensive, but once you buy wire cages, if you buy the good heavy wire, the concrete wire, and make your own cages, you'll use them the rest of your life. They won't ever wear out. Now, if you buy these little $2 and $3 tomato cages, that's worthless. If you'll know Daniel Arms, he made a video on that back about 3 months ago, how they were worthless. You know, you put it around a tomato, and the tomato gets big enough, it just caves that little wire out. They use wire about the size of that ink pen, right inside that ink fountain pen there, that little teeny wire, just about a 1/16 of a wire, inch wire. It's not big enough for anything, and it gets a heavy load on it, it'll just cave over on you. So buy you some, if you're going to use cages, get you some concrete reinforcing wire at the lumber yard, cut it into, you know, if you want them, say 2.5 foot across, you measure 3.14 times that. And if you want a 2-foot cage, you'll cut it into about 7-foot pieces and make a cage to go in that bucket. It's always 3.14 times the diameter of your cage that you want. So if you want say a 1.5 inch cage, 1.5 foot cage across, you'd multiply that times 3.14, come out with approximately 4.5, 5 feet, and cut it and make it in there. But it's best to make one big enough, 2-foot diameter, to go in there. Well, that's all. That's enough about the cages. But if you like this video, punch a button, ring the bell, and subscribe, and we're going to keep making you videos for that.